If you turn on your air conditioner and the outdoor unit doesn't run at all, you might have a faulty capacitor. This is a fairly common repair, and while it might sound easy enough to do yourself, there are a couple of reasons why you should consider calling a professional. But first, let's talk about what capacitors are and how they work. Air conditioners need quite a lot of power to start, which is where the capacitor comes in. The capacitor provides the initial jolt of energy to get things started, and then it works to keep the outdoor unit running while the thermostat calls for cooling. There are two types of capacitors: start capacitors and run capacitors. The job of the start capacitor is to start the outdoor unit. The run capacitor then kicks in to keep the compressor and the motor running. Most residential air conditioners have one single capacitor, called a dual capacitor, that functions as both a start and a run capacitor. The capacitor looks like a small metal can with wire terminals on top. Sometimes when the capacitor fails, it will look like an exploded soda can with the top pushed out. A failed capacitor is a quick fix for a trained technician. In most cases, the wires are removed from the old capacitor and placed snugly onto the new capacitor, and the problem is fixed. But that is not something you should do yourself. The biggest reason that you don't want to DIY this is because capacitors store electrical energy, and this is true even after power to the AC unit has been turned off. Most of the time, a failed capacitor will discharge into the windings of the motor. But that isn't always the case. If you don't know what you're doing, you could get a pretty bad shock. HVAC technicians will short out the old capacitor to make sure it has been discharged before removing it from the system. While there are some AC repairs and maintenance procedures that you can safely do yourself, you should always leave anything involving electricity to the professionals. AC capacitors come in a multitude of sizes. Even if you take a chance and try to do it yourself, you might not know which size capacitor you need. Sometimes the old capacitors are difficult to read, and if you don't know what you are looking at, you could get the wrong size capacitor and ultimately shorten the life of your air conditioner's motor, which is going to be more expensive than having a tech out to replace a capacitor. The wiring on the capacitor needs to be installed on the correct terminals. This part is fairly simple, but again, sometimes the labels on the old capacitor are difficult to read. An HVAC tech will be able to trace the wires back and connect them to the correct terminals, even if the old capacitor is illegible. If you think you have a failed capacitor, always call a licensed HVAC professional. It might look like an easy part to replace, but it is dangerous to do yourself. Luckily, capacitors tend to be inexpensive and can be replaced in a matter of minutes, so the service call shouldn't be too expensive. You can click the link in the description box below to find an HVAC professional in your area. We also have a free cheat sheet with 28 tricks that can help you save on your electricity, heating, or cooling bill each month. Click the link in the description to download.